Good morning, friends. This is the Roaming Prepper, and this is going to be a pre-recorded Saturday Sitrep. I got my hands on a bunch of releases, actually. I called around using my corporate contacts, releases, everything from State Department to foreign embassies to companies about what's going on overseas, and what we all thought we knew. There's more to it. This whole investigation kind of got to a point that I had to walk away from my desk. I printed it and stuck it in my backpack and figured I'd deal with it later. I had to walk away. So what I'm going to do, I'll be right back, and I even broke out the reading glasses. We're going to go through some of these documents. Well, welcome back, guys. This is the Roaming Prepper, and I hope you all are having a good day. Like I said, this was kind of difficult to read. I got to tell you, what I can tell you is that there's a lot more moving parts than one would expect. What we're seeing in the media, and it's not that it's not being reported. There are a couple of things I've actually looked at on the internet, and they actually could be found, but if you don't know they're happening, you don't know what to put in a search engine, right? You put Ukraine war and you get, dozens of videos of various types. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these reports. So there are two reports, like summary reports, and I won't go into the details of where I got the info. I would encourage everyone, because some of this is unsubstantiated, some of this is unconfirmed. I shouldn't say unsubstantiated. They have sources, but I didn't go through every single thing because, as you can see, it was like pages and pages of stuff. I even put a highlighter to them to try and keep my head straight. So I guess I'll start with the basics. So there are two reports. Today is the 4th, so the one that I saw today actually dealt with the previous 24 hours, and then the one I saw yesterday dealt with the 24 hours before that. Now, the reason I started digging this stuff up was because I actually watched Canadian Prepper's video, and I'm going to shout him out later. Canadian had, he has that company of his up in Calgary. I think he's up in Canada, and hence Canadian Prepper, duh. And while he was making the video, he said that he had been reached out to by the Red Cross during the Canadian trucker convoys, and they asked for all his material to be basically all his MREs and a bunch of other stuff shipped within 24 or 48 hours. It was a ridiculous request that he didn't necessarily acquiesce to, because he's like, I just can't do that. What you're asking is insane. And he went on, made a video, and then he told his followers, hey guys, I think in the next 24 hours or 48 hours something's going to happen with the trucker convoy and the protest. He was off by a day. He was off, and we don't know what's going on, but that was a damn good estimate on his part using the information he had. He called it out like 24 or 48 hours, and it was actually like 72. He was like a day off. And in my book, trying to understand these kind of geopolitics, and you're 24 hours off or so, you did a pretty damn good job of putting your ducks in a row. So kudos to Nate up there in Canada. But I started digging, and he just put out another video, and he was greatly concerned because other people he's dealing with, again, him using his corporate and professional contacts, are telling him that they're sending all sorts of equipment to Europe from Canada, from the US, that would have to do or be relevant to biological, radiological incidents. And with everything going on right now, that's a bad thing. So within 24 hours of him making that video, the rest of us, find out that Russia got into a firefight with the Ukrainians in the complex of one of the largest nuclear reactors in Europe, and actually one of the top 7, I believe, in the world. And they actually tore up the facility a bit. The Russians took it. They were able to get local personnel who work at the facility and said, look, we won't give you a hard time, but you must contain this thing. And they were able to get everything under control, from what I've heard. Now, that's not covered in these docs here, but I do want to give you a rundown. I would encourage everyone to do some homework, but this is interesting. So, day 7 of the Russian invasion, which would have been the March 2nd. Is that right? Yeah, it would have been the release from March 2nd, which was posted on the 3rd. And I'll just give you some highlight summaries here. So, reported overnight hits on thermal power plant in the Chuyu, near the Chuyu military airport. The dormitory, several bombs struck downtown buildings, including the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Security Service of Ukraine, Karazin National University, which is now on fire. Going down, Joint Forces Operation announced it had captured secret Russian planning documents dated in January. Stating that Marine Brigade from Russia's Black Sea Fleet was going to attempt to a landing in the Ukraine between February 20th and the 6th, but they were delayed. There was an unconfirmed or a third-party think tank actually had reports that some of the members of the Marine unit were demoralized or refused to participate. There was some kind of issue, and that unit did not deploy as intended. On March 1st, before the war, Ukraine had gotten into an alliance with a trade alliance with Turkey, and they were making what is called the Bayraktar Drones, Bayraktar in English. Bayraktar Drones. It's kind of like a Reaper drone, but instead of looking like an airplane, it looks almost like a stealth fighter. It's like a triangle-looking thing, and it's pretty big. From the pictures I've seen, it's smaller than the Reaper, but I would say it's on the order of maybe 20 feet by 30 feet. I mean, it'll take up your driveway for sure, right? Anyway, these damn drones apparently are very effective and very fast. Right now, reports are that these drones being used in place of the aircraft that got destroyed on the ground have destroyed over 180 Russian military vehicles, or incapacitated them to where they were no longer viable pieces of machinery in the fight. This would include tanks, multiple Grad rocket launchers, you know, those rocket trucks with the rockets on their back, as well as APCs in the Sumy region alone. These drones, because they don't need a long runway, they can arm them and take them off in a farm field, and they can do it quick. One report indicated a Ukrainian Chochka-U missile counterattacked the Berdansk airport and destroyed a bunch of Russian equipment there. And then subsequently, the unit attached to that launcher liberated Makariv, 30 miles west of Kiev. So the Ukrainians are not only counterattacking, they're doing so effectively and actually retaking towns in the process. There's a report in here, and I won't go into too much detail, that their national police, basically their equivalent of the FBI, has detained individuals who were affiliated with Russia who snuck into the country prior and were hiding in the bomb shelters amongst the civilians as victims, and then they were texting or messaging somehow information back to the Russian lines. Some of them had put handguns, communications devices, and ammunition in children's toys or in personal belongings, much the same way a drug dealer would like hide cocaine in a jacket. But they did get found. They were tracked. The information was intercepted, and they say on the eve of the attack, one of these individuals passed information about the location of a military facility to Russia, and then a subsequent missile strike destroyed this facility. So they detained him, and he will be prosecuted for treason. So he's a Ukrainian citizen who was aiding the Russians in Ukraine, much like in the U.S. If you are convicted, among the punishments is hanging, which is still an international, accepted international punishment for death. According to the Ministry of the Interior, 80,000 Ukrainians who left the country with their families to get them to a safe place subsequently turned around and came back. But overall, there are almost 1 million refugees that are fleeing Ukraine right now. Then the international response, guys, went on for pages and pages. I'll give you a few highlights, and this was 2 days ago. Azerbaijan has curtailed ruble-denominated operations. Ireland said they are capable of taking on up to 20,000 Ukrainian refugees. Norway has frozen all oil and gas investment, which is a big deal because Norway, the North Sea oil field, which is massive, it's also the standard, one of the standards for the Brent oil pricing you see on the stock market. That's going to hurt them in the oil field pocketbook, so to say. Let's see, more oil and gas. South Korea will suspend financial transactions with all the banks. Spain, in a reversal of their leader's decision, they had a government council, their parliament and their leadership, and they've agreed to provide offensive military equipment to the Ukrainian resistance to enable them to strike back. Switzerland sent its special forces team to extract the ambassador as well as the remaining diplomatic staff from Kiev because the ambassador called in and said he could no longer leave safely, but he stayed behind with under a dozen volunteers because they wanted to support the Ukrainian government as long as they could. He felt it was his duty to stay there as long as possible. But things were getting so bad that they had to bail. And Switzerland is sending cargo planes with about 25 tons of equipment, as well as a convoy with medical materials. Okay, now, Turkey did speak to Russia, and they made a deal. They said they would not impose financial sanctions, but in exchange, they requested that for the next so many weeks, Russia not send any more warships through the Dardanelles Strait, which goes past Istanbul. Turkey's actually on either side of that strait, so when you go from the Mediterranean to the Black Sea, you have to pass the Dardanelles. Turkey said, look, we're not imposing sanctions, but we also don't want you to send any ship through right now. Let's get some of these evacuees out and clear out some of the cargo ship. Russia said that's fair, we'll make that deal. And so Russia has canceled plans to send more warships through the Turkish water. At Turkey's request, Turkey said its Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits have been closed under a 1936 pact known as the Montreux Convention. But Turkey also sold drones to Kiev, as I said earlier. So, but as part of the deal, they also told Russia, we won't sanction you, and we're going to basically try to be neutral for now until this plays out. UN General Assembly, I live streamed that the other day. It was pretty useless. Now, important note for all of you, if you know someone who is an expat, an American, Canadian, UK, someone who's not Ukrainian or Russian, who is in the country and may be trapped, they can reach out to the travel agencies. If they're with a corporation, they're corporate travel agencies that can help them get out in an emergency situation, and they'll figure out the payment later. Among them, Carlson Wagonlit Europe Vacation and the Carlson Wagonlit uh, corporate travel agency, which they basically, corporations hire them to be their internal travel agency. American Express, Expedia, BCD Travel, Flight Center, Travel Leaders Direct, and Direct Travel. There are a few others listed here. So if someone's trapped and they're not supposed to be there and they just didn't get out in time, they can try to reach out to some of these people and see if they can get out. Now, typically you must have a valid passport. The U.S. Embassy in Moscow has said U.S. citizens should consider departing Russia. They said if your passport expired but you aren't a U.S. citizen, you can travel on the expired passport assuming the following. You're a U.S. citizen, you are currently abroad seeking direct return to the U.S., you're flying directly to the U.S. and only have maybe a connecting flight in another country, you're not camping out somewhere. If your expired passport is undamaged, unaltered, it's in your possession, and it expired on or after January 1st of 2020, because that's when the Rona really took effect. And so they'll give you a lot of leeway to get out of the country back to the U.S. Now, you do not qualify to travel if you're currently seeking to go to another country on the way to the U.S. for more than a connecting flight or a reasonable overnight stop. So in other words, if there is no connecting flight and you get stuck in Paris for 2 days, they're going to waive that. That's fine. But if you're like, oh, I'm going to spend 3 months in Paris and then go home, no. They won't let you do it. And they have to see your itinerary. And yeah, so if you have family or friends who are U.S., I think Canada's doing much the same, be sure to let them know that they can travel with an expired passport with certain conditions, and the sooner the better. Okay. There have been anecdotal reports, not fully confirmed, that dual citizen men of military age cannot leave Ukraine. Ukraine is mandatory 18 to 60 for all men. Women volunteers if they want. Ukraine does not allow dual citizenship, so even with a U.S. passport, military-age men are experiencing problems at the border. If you are a straight U.S. citizen, they'll let you leave because that's not your fight, but if you're like a dual citizen, they may make you stay. Also, Hungary is allowing travel through their country on an expired passport. If you can't fly out, they'll allow you to go out via ground. And Albania, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Estonia, the EU, Georgia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland are all helping people evacuate. Poland has opened additional pedestrian crossings. If you know someone who's trying to get across to Poland or Romania, they must go to the checkpoint. If they sneak across, they'll be arrested for fear that they're saboteurs of some type. So, now you can see why I was a little bit exhausted earlier, gang. Let's see, if you're a U.S. citizen with a Ukrainian spouse or child seeking to travel, there's a I-130 petition that you can fill out to see if you can expatriate the spouse and or child. Keep in mind, if the spouse is a military-age man, he's going to stay. They're not going to let him out, but they'll let you take your kids. So if you're the spouse of a male who is of military age, he's stuck, you're not. If you're the husband, if you're like an American married to a Ukrainian girl and y'all have children, they should allow her to leave as well as the children. So the State Department, state.gov, has a bunch of information on this, guys. Please check it out if you know anyone overseas. Poland, about 450,000 Ukrainian refugees went across the landmass to Poland, and they do have 1-800 numbers on the Polish website, www.gov.pl. I don't think that's right. I think I screwed it up. Anyway, the Polish government does have has a site for people to call and or email to try and facilitate out. What the countries around them are doing is trying to clear people out and let the fighters do their thing. Protest activity, as you can imagine, it was pages and pages, but I'm going to very briefly show the Russian protests that have been allegedly scheduled. Yeah, there's pages like that. So that's from different sources. That was compiled by this compilation organization. That's a lot. Now, the more recent report, though, that gets a little shady. And I'll go into some of the bullet points here as well, because this is where I started reading this, and I'm like, holy shit, it's getting worse as the days progress, as many of you have already surmised. So, General Andrei Sukovetsky, the deputy commander of the 41st Armored Unit of Russia, was killed in combat by the Ukrainian army during a counterattack. So they lost their commander, and that unit subsequently, I don't know what their status is. And this is what started to bother me, is we were all afraid that other countries would get involved, and thus far we're not hearing that. But if you look on the news, and I did find these, an Estonian cargo ship is reportedly sunk after hitting a mine. 4 members are missing, but then they said they may have found them, so there's a bit of confusion. Ship did sink for sure, everyone agrees on that. A Bangladeshi flagged vessel was hit by a Russian missile. And then a second vessel, not involved, not a Ukrainian or Russian ship, was shelled by Russian forces outside of the port of Odessa and was on fire. Dozid, Russia's last independent news channel, has been suspended, and they've liquidated Echo of Moscow's radio station. They took the equipment and sent everyone home, or threatened to arrest them. Also, Russia is aware that Ukraine has asked for a foreign legion, and right now a multitude of countries have volunteers, many of whom Ukrainian or married Ukrainians, or who have friends and feel strongly enough to go assist the Ukrainian counter. Belgium has reported quite a few. Now, in theory, according to these reports, being a mercenary is illegal in the EU. However, a mercenary is defined as someone who is being paid money to go to war, or is volunteering to go to war against a lawful government. In this case, some European experts have already told the EU that if they are volunteering to defend a lawful government and country from invasion from a powerful neighbor, in this case, then they are technically upholding the law, not against the law. So the EU's kind of turning a blind eye on this. Russia did say they will be treated as saboteurs or the mercenaries, and they're eligible to go to the gulags in Siberia. So they're not playing around. Russia finally took control of the port city of Cursin, and there is a curfew from 8 o'clock to 6 in the morning. This includes cars only allowed to move in daylight. If they're moving at night, they're going to get shot, period. Cars carrying food and medicine can go through after inspection. People may walk the streets peacefully in groups of no more than 2. That excludes children. So if it's a mother with 3 kids, or a dad with 3 kids, or a husband and wife and they have little kids, the Russians would probably let that pass. More than 2 adults, no, unless there's a specific reason, like someone's disabled and they're carrying the person. So they are under a tight lockdown, and it is martial law for those folks. There was a missile attack on Kiev the night of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4 of the missiles may have, of the 4 missiles that were fired, heavy missiles, several were shot down. Unfortunately, the debris from one of the ones shot down then fell on a area that was housing civilians, so now civilians have been injured. No fatalities reported with that one. I gotta tell you guys, I'm kind of concerned about these foreign ships trying to like navigate away from the war zone, and they're getting hit by missiles and torpedoes. So there's a variety of There's a variety of cities right now who are trying to evacuate. As of the mainstream media today, they said that Russia and Ukraine did agree on a Red Cross pathway, like certain paths, where civilians will go through a Russian checkpoint, and if they're good, they stay on that road. They can go to a Ukrainian checkpoint at a distance of whatever kilometers, and they can engage one another, and then they go through that checkpoint, and then they can retreat, and that road will be off limits to military vehicles other than the soldiers manning the checkpoints, but civilians can leave and aid can come in. All aid coming in to the Russian control areas will get inspected. So there's no, like, smuggling ammunition. Good Lord, the international response the next day was quite substantive. But they're already reporting supply chain issues. So Volkswagen and Audi are reporting issues with getting their hands on parts and machinery. And right now, they're also saying that pro-Russian news agencies in Romania, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic have been shut down. So, folks, it's been a lot of movement. And, of course, then the continued list of sanctions and whatnot. There are more protests expected in the next 24 to 48. And, again, that's kind of a partial list of the protest plan for the next few days. So folks, this is serious stuff. Right now, Russia has closed its borders as well, from what I've heard. They're not allowing Russian citizens to leave the country. It's also been reported that unofficially, and again, this one is not confirmed, this one was not even listed in these docs, that part of the reason Russians are trying to flee the country is there are rumors in the street that they're going to initiate a draft, and not a temporary draft. It'll be a massive, like, we're going to kick someone's ass draft. That's unconfirmed. I haven't copied that verifiably from any other source. Most of these you will find in the news. If you look for them, you'll see reports of, for instance, the freighters that were damaged, stuff like that. So yeah, this is gotten very complicated very quickly. Now Turkey is kind of playing traffic cop with vessels going in and out. The Romanians, Polish, Latvian, the Balkans are all trying to receive people. The Red Cross is trying to bring food in. Fortunately, Ukraine and Russia have agreed to cease fire in certain areas so that civilians can escape, children and families. So at least there's some semblance of humanity in this disaster. And the good news is, from what I've read and what I've seen, the nuclear power plant that was attacked and damaged is under control. They have engineers now from both countries under a ceasefire in that area. Now that Russia controls it, they allowed the engineers to come in and the technical people and manage that facility to keep it under control. So, folks, yeah, that's it. A lot of things going on. It was a lot to read through. There's some stuff here I just didn't share. I'll let y'all look for it yourselves. It's there's and then it had links to some videos and footage that I probably could have done without seeing. So I'm going to leave it to that and give you guys an update. But understand that, one, the supply chain issues are very, very real, and now it's affecting vessels going in and out of the Black Sea, including from Turkey, Romania, Estonia, the Bangladeshi ship, which has, they're near India. They have nothing to do with what's going on here, and they got attacked. There's a lot of confusion, and this is something I've said from the early part of this, just before the hostilities started and things were starting to escalate. I'd mention my big fear is someone's going to screw up in the field, in the fog of war, so to say, in the battle. Someone's going to attack the wrong thing in confusion, which has already happened. Thus far, it hasn't escalated. And the next thing you know, it's going to pop off something bigger. If a Russian aircraft attacks a NATO ship, they're going to get shot down. Or they're going to sink the ship, and then it's going to escalate. I'm hoping that does not happen. I should note that the Ukrainian military, although smaller than Russia, was not that much smaller. When Russia went and beat up Georgia, that was a very small country, right? So it was a no-brainer there. And even the Georgians gave them hell for a couple of days. But Ukraine's army and air force was reasonably large and modernized and competent compared to Russia's. It was not bigger by any means, but it was sizable. So this, Russia trying to go in and kind of just take the whole thing, that didn't work out very well. So this is on day 7, day 8, and again they lost a general. They've lost one city. They took one and lost one. So this show ain't over yet, folks. And unfortunately, it's the children and innocents that are suffering. So what I would recommend, and again, there's not a lot we can do as individuals. There are things you can do if you want to. One, I would recommend, if you want to donate to the Red Cross, I know some folks are not a fan, or any of the agencies, go to the State Department websites or the embassy, the Ukrainian embassy. Go to the official websites if you can locate them, and or to the Ukrainian embassy in your state. There typically should be one, or you can call the one in like New York or DC and ask how you can help if you want to donate food or money or whatnot. I would also recommend to everyone, one of the things you're seeing here, you notice a lot of the Ukrainian people, even if they're not fighting, are stepping up in one way or another, whether they're driving tractors and towing Russian tanks into the mud or out of the mud, or whether they're road blocking, or whether they're putting out fires or doing first aid. I encourage everyone of a preparedness mindset to understand and participate in the local emergency response in your area. Whether it's your state guard, whether it's your volunteer fire department, even if it's just your city council. Be involved. Don't just sit in the background, watch the YouTube videos. I've been involved for years. To me, I think it makes a big difference in my mental and physical preparedness for what's going on, because I know what's going to happen and I know how the processes work. And this is beneficial for you guys as well. So I highly recommend it if you have time. It takes time and may take some money. But folks, I'm going to wrap this one up. That's a down and dirty summary of what I saw in those reports, and I'll let you guys do your own research. I appreciate you all. God bless. Be safe. If you're on the road, Godspeed, and prayers to all the people suffering. And let's hope this thing spins down and not up, because it's starting to affect other countries. I'm afraid at some point someone's going to screw up, and it's going to be ugly. So hopefully I'm wrong. But I also didn't think Russia would attack for another month or so because they wanted some kind of financial deal. And I was totally wrong with that one. So that might have cost me $5 somewhere. So you guys be good, pay attention, and if you can get involved, get that knowledge, understand what could happen in your area if an emergency, even not this, could be an earthquake or a fire. Understand how those things work so that you can move forward understanding what's going on around you, because that kind of situational awareness and competence is important. And I'd rather be part of a response than waiting for a response. That's just me. You guys be safe, take care, and I will see you later.